Hello, this is Bill Webb, aka Billy Indiana. Today I'm going to count down my favorite games from 2022 that were new releases in 2022. I'm going to share my top 10 and maybe mention a few honorable mentions. So if you're curious to see what my favorite new releases in 2022 were, stay tuned. So first, let me say I played 33 games that were released in 2022. I have a long list of about 100 games that were released in 2022 that I still need to play or want to play. Some of them even on my shelves. I just received the Feld City Collection a couple days ago. Haven't even unboxed them yet, but those were all 2022 releases, even though I didn't receive them until the last week of January, so in 2023. So there's a bunch that I still need to play that might move on to this list. And so I'll put all the games, all 33 of them that I played, in the description down below, and you can decide, were some of the ones that I didn't include in this top 10 list some of your favorites? What are the ones that aren't on my list that I haven't played yet that you say, hey, Billy Indiana, get this one to the table? So I also want to give a couple honorable mentions, so let's start with those. First up, it was a game that came out in 2022, but it's not a game you can play over and over because it's an exit game, and I don't even have it with me anymore because it's long gone. But the Lord of the Rings Shadows over Mordor, that exit game was spectacular. We played it this last summer with my son and enjoyed it. Huge Lord of the Rings fan, so is my son. So we love just kind of reliving the story of the Lord of the Rings through that exit game, and we tend to like the exit games also. The unlock games are good, and some of those other kind of escape room style games are fun. We've enjoyed a lot of them. Exit games seem to be kind of the pinnacle for us. The downside is you play them once and you're done. So I don't have it with me. And so it's an honorable mention because I feel bad saying it was one of my top 10 games when I could only play it once. And a lot of these games are part of the love is that I'll get to play them over and over and over again. So honorable mention, exit the game, Lord of the Rings, Shadows over Mordor. Next up is an honorable mention, not because I didn't love it, but because technically it's a remake of a game that, and actually I'm kind of breaking this rule, but I feel like for this one, it's not enough of a remake necessarily. I don't know. I never played the original, but Fjords is one where Frans Benno de Long created the game Fjords, and I never played the original, but then he passed away, and so Grail Games was able to get the rights for the game, and Phil Walker Harding kind of reworked some things, but for the majority of the game, it really is just the same as it was before. They just added some expansion kind of an ideas to it. So I'm honorable mentioning it, not because I don't think it deserves it. It came out in 2022. I received it as a Kickstarter that I backed. Really enjoy the game a lot, and I like the runes that Phil Walker Harding included into this game, and some of the other slight shifts that he made to gameplay. But it is pretty much a straight up reprint or reboot of an older game with just some add-ons. So I feel like it's not quite enough different to say it's a purely 2022 release. Like I said, I'm going to break that rule a little bit, but I think the one I'm going to break it with is a little newer, a little more change to it from the original. So a great game, definitely worth honorable mention, and one that I look forward to playing to more in the future. So now let's get into the top 10. Number 10. This one is by Eric B. Vogel, and it is First Empires, a Sandcastle Games game. This is a nice area. Well, it's kind of area control and kind of not. You're sort of battling and you're sort of not. You're rolling dice and you're moving up tracks. I have a video review, so I'll try to remember to put a link up here. But I love the way you're using the dice, and then you're choosing which dice, but you can manipulate the dice with cards you have. But then if you use the cards to manipulate the dice, you can't use the cards for their other function. And you're trying to maintain control of potentially certain territories on the map while taking over territories just by majority rule that are temporarily maybe occupied by other people. And you've got these city tokens that you're trying to protect, but you're also trying to take over the city tokens from other players. And it's basically a point accumulation game. Can you accumulate points by the cards you play? Can you accumulate points by moving up the different tracks? Can you accumulate points by capturing other people's cities? And so in the end, you're trying to see who best basically did all of those things. And it comes in just this nice little package, and it's really easy to teach and easy to learn and quick to play. It's beautiful. The production is gorgeous. And everyone that I play this with has been pleasantly surprised. A couple of them just gone right out and bought it too. So First Empires, number 10 in my games from 2022, released in 2022. Number 9, I don't have with me. I do own it, but I loaned it out to a friend, so I can't show it to you, and that is Trekking Through History. Underdog Games has come up with just, I think, an increasingly good line of games. I thought Trekking Through the National Parks was good. I thought Trekking Through the World was even better. I feel like Trekking Through History and HerStory that came out this last year both kind of eclipsed that in some ways. There are certain things I like about Trekking the World better, but there are other things that I really like about Trekking Through History and HerStory. HerStory didn't quite make the top 10 here, although I love the theme of it and I've loved playing it. And I actually don't have that anymore either because I've given away both of my copies, so I need to get another one. But both the copies that I've had, I've given away. So the game that I want to recognize here is Trekking Through History. And I really love several things about it. You've got this tableau of cards that all have dates on it. You're trying to choose the dates that you can chronologically put in your growing tableau, your timeline. And then once you get to the point where you can no longer extend that timeline, you have to kind of retire that one and start a new one. But the more cards you can get in your timeline, the more points it's worth at the end. At the same time, every time you take a card, each card has a little benefit depending on where it's at in that sort of river. And so you're collecting these little tokens from, depending on where that card's at, and sometimes even from the card itself. And then you're putting those tokens on another little board, an individual player board, but you're putting them out in a pattern so that you can gain bonuses. And then those bonuses can help you potentially change time. Like you can use time crystals to slow down how much time it takes you to take each card, because every card you take also costs you time. And so there's this little wheel that's a clock that you're moving around, and when you get to the end of the clock, the day is over, and for you. And when everybody gets to the end of that clock, that whole day is over, and you get a new player board out that's got a new pattern to build, and you continue building up, but a new deck of cards comes out with all new dates and all new events. You can also learn a lot about history because on the back of every card is some explanation about why that event was a great moment in history, or maybe not always great, but a notable moment in history. And so there's a lot of good historical lessons to be learned reading the backs of those cards, but you don't necessarily have to if that's not what you're playing the game for. The production is beautiful. It's got a tiny little expansion in there that gives you another way to kind of add a little twist to the game. So many things I like about this game. It's very easy to teach, very easy to comprehend. And again, every time I taught it to someone and we played it, they all were like, wow, this is a really good game. And several of them then went out to buy it. So Trekking Through History is my number 9. Number 8 is a game that I don't own, but I hope to eventually, and that is Sky Mines, an Alexander Pfister game. And Sky Mines is a recreation of Mombasa, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Never played that one either. And in fact, when I posted on Instagram, I think it was, a picture of Sky Mines, and I said it made me want to try Mombasa to see the differences, Alexander Pfister actually, I don't know how he saw it. I guess I tagged him, so maybe he just saw the tag and checked it out. But he actually wrote a message just saying, don't bother playing Mombasa. Everything that makes that game good, all the mechanisms, it's pretty much the same in Sky Mines, but the theme is much better. And so even the creator of the game said I should just stick with Sky Mines. I don't know. I still kind of want to play it, just didn't say that I have. But I know the theming of Mombasa is troublesome, and so I understand why a lot of people would not want to play that game. I've just always had this curiosity about the mechanisms itself. But Sky Mines, I really appreciate that they recreated that, or Alexander recreated that in a way that would get rid of the troublesome theming and put an interesting theme on it. I really like the different ways you're building up tracks. I was terrible at it. I tried to build up the tracks where you're putting the tiles in sequence, and I did okay, but then the tracks up top with, I think it was helium, and I totally bombed up there. Didn't get anything. I like the card choices that you're choosing out from the main board. I like the trying to maintain kind of majority in the different tracks around the edge of the board. So many fun things about Sky Mines. I really want to play it again, and I know the other side of the board has a different way to play with some different unique gameplay features that I haven't even had a chance to try. Again, I don't own it, so just relying on the ability to play my friends' copies at this time. But that's, again, one thing I love about my gaming group is between the members of my gaming group, I would put us up against just about any gaming group in terms of our collection. We have such a wide variety from old to new, and we're constantly adding, and we're always teaching each other's new games. I'm so blessed to be a part of that group and have the opportunity to play so many new games that I could never afford to get all of them myself. Sky Mines is one, though, I probably will want to get eventually because I did really enjoy it. Next up is one I just played this last weekend, and I have only played it once, but it really made an impression. Again, I don't own it. It was a friend's copy, the same friend who owns Sky Mines. But I got to play it this weekend at ConQuest over in Ventura, a game day. And if you're in the Ventura, Oxnard, Camarillo area, you should check out on Meetup the Ventura Gaming Group. ConQuest is gaming days that are going to be building up over the next several months. We had one this last Saturday. There's one in February. I think there's one in April, one in June, and then in July there's a 3-day convention in Ventura. So if you're in the area, check it out. You can, like I said, look it up on Meetup, Ventura Board Gaming Group, and look for the ConQuest game days. Really had a lot of fun. Just a lot of people bringing their games in and having a great time. My friend brought Woodcraft, Vladimir Suchy game, and I haven't played any of his games before, so I was really excited to. I was very intrigued knowing about the game and the concept of gluing the dice together to mimic gluing wood pieces together, and cutting the dice to mimic cutting the wood, and needing certain kinds of wood to build certain kinds of furniture to satisfy certain orders. And the puzzle of the game was just so fun to think about, okay, which of these actions do I want to use? And when should I use the lantern to take this action but move this tile forward on the saw blade center timer? Because if I can move that forward and take an action that's further back, I'm going to get a bonus for taking an action that's further back. Or I can play 3 lanterns and get a whole nother turn. And there were asymmetric player powers depending on the board you started with. So many fun things. I love the idea of trying to choose just the right orders to pick, because you had to play the orders that you chose at the beginning of the game, but you could also buy orders to add. But then if you didn't get them completed, they were going to move down the track, and eventually they could cost you reputation points. And the whole goal was you had to gain reputation and gain victory points along the track. And I think I got second or third. I know I didn't win. I did reasonably well, and I really enjoyed it. I love those efficiency puzzles in that kind of game. But I don't think it was because I did reasonably well that I loved it. I like the creativity of the theme integration, and I like those kind of puzzles. So Woodcraft is one. Again, probably will be adding it to my collection at some point. Very grateful that I was able to play my friend's copy this last weekend. Next up, number 6 is one that I do own and do have here with me, and that is The Spill. This is by Smirk and Dagger Games, Smirk and Laughter Games, by Andy Kim, with art by Kwanchai Moria. And the art is beautiful. This is a very pandemic feeling game. It's a cooperative game where you're trying to save animals and cap off an oil spill from this big rig in the ocean. And the theme is so well integrated. It does very much feel like pandemic. And I think I have a video for this one too. I can put a link up above reviewing this and talking a little bit about the gameplay. But I like cooperative games to begin with, and I like this ecological theme. I like the way the theme was integrated very nicely. There were lots of little twists that didn't make it exactly like Pandemic, but it was familiar enough that all of us had played Pandemic and we just jumped right in and could play right away. There wasn't a big steep learning curve. I think because it's cooperative and because the rules were clear and the gameplay is so thematic, I feel like I could teach this to people who even haven't played a lot of games, and they could really get into it. So The Spill, I've only played it a few times, but really look forward to playing it more. Number 6 on my top 2022 releases that I had a chance to play. Now we're into the top 5. Number 5 is one that I've been waiting on for a long time. I got a chance to play it online with Brant Brinkerhoff, and this is from Ash Games. I think it's Ash. It's either Ash or Ash, I forget, so Brant can let me know sometime. But Oros is just such a unique game, and I loved playing it with him and Allison from Better Half Reviews Online and one of her friends. It was terrific. I knew I was going to love it. I got the Kickstarter in. I think it was just right. Actually, I think it actually didn't get in my hands until January. And I know we're almost to February now, but I was gone the whole break, and it arrived sometime during break. And I got home on January 3rd, opened it up. I played it a couple times. There's so much unique things in Oros. The game board is constantly changing because it's like this seismic activity of these plates crashing and erupting volcanoes and creating mountains, and you're sending out you have this demigod that's sending out followers to build shrines and temples on the mountains, and you have your demigod moving up this ziggurat, which is kind of the timer of the game. And the action selection is so unique because the action selection kind of worker placement deal is on your own board. So instead of blocking worker placement spots from someone else, you might accidentally block yourself because you need to figure out, okay, if I have a worker there, I can't use that action. So I need to think about not only which action I'm using, but which worker I'm taking to that action from a different action so that I can clear the one I want to do next. So lots of really thinky, puzzly things about this game. It's beautiful. There's so many little tweaks to the Kickstarter version as well, where you can put the tiles together and it creates a puzzle, which is actually featured on the inside of the box. There's little hidden art all throughout the game. There's a whole checklist in the rulebook. You can try to find that. There's just so much that I love about Oros, and I can't wait to play more. It's got 4 individually designed AI, so if you're playing solo with 2 players, you have to use that. But they're very easy to run, and everyone is different. You know, some are really calm and tame and don't really take aggressive actions. Some are super aggressive and they're knocking your followers off the board. So much to enjoy about Oros. I hope a lot of people get to try this game because it's very unique and in my top 5 2022 releases. A terrific game. I could see this one possibly climbing too with more plays. The one downside I will say is that with 2 players, which is how my wife and we play a lot of our games 2 players, you do have to use the AI. And while it is easy to run, I just have never enjoyed that in games. I would rather have a 2-player game where we didn't have to do that. And so that's the one thing that holds it back. But my wife really enjoyed it. And I think with 3 and 4 players, when you don't have to use the AI, it's really shines. So excited to teach this in my game group soon. And that is number 5. Number 4 is one that I don't own, and another one that I played this weekend at the ConQuest game day, and that is Mosaic, A Story of Civilization. The downside of this game is it is massive, and it took a long time to play, but only one of us in the group had ever played it before, so it was new for 4 out of the 5 of us. But I loved it. I haven't played a lot of civilization building games, and I have to admit that part of the draw or the attraction was the grand Kickstarter version that my friend had. So it had all the cool pieces. And I was looking online because I was like, should I buy this for myself so I could play it more? But I think I didn't do it yet just because, one, as I was comparing the retail versus the Kickstarter, certain aspects of the Kickstarter and the way you would see those figures on the board, I think actually would affect gameplay. And so I think the Kickstarter version with all those fancy bits and pieces makes the gameplay easier than I feel like the retail version would. So I'd like to try the retail version sometime, but I love the tableau building, and it has the tags like a Terraforming Mars or an Arc Nova, and that was kind of what I focused on. There's area control going out on the board, and some people focused more on that. Other people focused more on card play. Other people focused more on taxation and tariffing. But there's so many ways you could go, and I think that's what I loved about it. And I tend to like the set collection and like multiplication of points by getting certain cards that fit well with your tags. And that's actually how I was able to stay in the game with that kind of mechanism without really going hard on the area control out on the board. But so many fun things with that game. I really would love to play it again and try some different strategies. And there's different governments you can choose, and they all operate differently. There's different leaders you can choose, and they all operate differently and have different advantages. You start with different cards to begin with, and there's a little draft at the beginning to choose which cards. And so as you're passing them around, I was able to kind of get something that really meshed well together with my leader. And then I was able to grab the government that I feel like meshed best with my leader as well. Now, you might not always be able to do that, so then you'd have to kind of do the best you can with what you've got. So really loved the game. I do have to give an apology to John. Sorry I didn't stick with my deal. But it was a great game, and hopefully he'll eventually forgive me. Mosaic, A Story of Civilization, number 4 on my list. All right, number 3 is Planet Unknown. And I actually just played this again recently. I played it a number of times with a number of different people, but our gaming group just played this again Thursday night. This is a polyomino game where you're building out your planet, and you're putting those polyominoes together. Sometimes you want to get certain terrains together. Sometimes it doesn't matter. The water terrain needs to be over ice on your planet in order to move the water up on the water track. And it's another track climbing game like First Empires. Tend to enjoy those. I am terrible at this game. I think I've probably lost every time I've played, but I love it. I do love polyomino games. It's got a cool lazy Susan that fits in the middle of the table to hold all the polyominoes. And you can shuffle the polyominoes, obviously, between plays, but the middle section also spins, so you can rotate so that the square one isn't always with the T-shaped one. And so you could get maybe the 2-piece one with the 2-shaped one. So there's so many ways you can make variable the polyomino collection in the Lazy Susan. And then I got the Kickstarter version, so I think there's like, I don't know, 12 different planets, and they all have the base on one side, and then they all have a different planet on the other side with different abilities. And then you also have a player board, and I think there's like 10 player boards, and all the player boards have the base on one side, but then they all have a different corporation on the other side with, again, varying abilities. So the variability to this game and the way you could play it with so many different twists and turns, it seems like it's limited with the different corporations and the different planets. And then you got different objectives, and you've got different civ cards. And then you can also play with events. That's the only thing we left out. We did private objectives and we did public objectives that you're competing for, but we didn't do the events. I have used the events in the solo version though. They are brutal, but it's fun. So Planet Unknown, a great polyomino game. Number 3 on my list, really loving that one still. And I can see myself getting just tons and tons of play out of that one because it is so variable. And again, everyone that I've taught that to has really enjoyed it. Now we're down to the top 2. And these top 2, I'm not going to show the whole game because they're both enormous. But number 2 is represented by this tiny little box. You can actually see it if you want. It is right here over my shoulder, Foundations of Rome. And this is the solo box, the Gardens of Ceres, designed by David Turchi. Now, I haven't actually even tried the solo version. Every time I've played, we've had 3, 4, 5 players. And it does go, when we played with 5, I was the only one that had played it, so that was part of it. But it did go a little long. When I played it with 4, it seemed like it was just about the right length, even though I think only 2 of us had played it at that time. It went pretty smoothly. And I love the fact that it's also a cooperative version that we've tried, and that was fun. And then there's also all these different modules you can put in where you can do a trading and stealing, and you can do a negotiation, you can take objectives, you can take different personal like powers, so many unique things that just make, again, the replayability of this Foundations of Rome game off the charts. And basically, it's kind of like a really fancy, blown-up acquire, sort of. You're getting these tiles, and you're taking those territories out on the main board, and then you're building buildings on those territories that you buy the lots and cluster them together, and then you can build buildings on them, and then you can upgrade those buildings. And the buildings are worth various things. Some give you population, which you do need to have to advance in the scoring. Some give you commerce. Some give you civilization points. So you want certain buildings to be by other buildings, either your own or other people's buildings, to score. And you get scoring in every round. And the plots come out in random order and they slide down in a river. So if you wait long enough, you might get it for cheap. But if you wait too long, someone else might take it because they don't want you to get it. So there is a little bit of hate drafting that can happen there, especially if there's nothing else for them to do. But like I said, I've just loved every time I've played this one. And it is... The production is off the charts, overblown, but that's part of what makes it so fun. When I showed it to my family at Thanksgiving, their eyes just got so big and like, can we play that? And many of them weren't really big gamers, but as soon as they saw, they're like, can we play that? They saw the board, the little trays coming out with all the buildings, and everyone had their own tray, and that makes the setup and teardown so much quicker. Foundations of Rome is a terrific game. Number 2 in my best games of 2022 releases. And my number 1, it was tight. All of these top 3 I've played quite a few times, and all of them are right there. But I tend to really love cooperative games, and so does my wife. And I played this with my wife. I've played it with a few different gaming groups, and every time it has been a hit. So my number 1 2022 release, and this is just a part of it, is Return to Dark Tower. And some people will say, is it even a game? It's just got this tower. It's just a gimmick. It's all overproduced. There's a game. There is a game. And I love this game. And you can see over my shoulder here is the game with the other expansion. And it is a cooperative game. And in Return to Dark Tower, yes, you have this really cool tower that sits in the middle. And some people complain, well, it's hard to see around the tower. Put it on a little Lazy Susan, spin it if you want to. Yes, you have to kind of lean. I didn't find it to be a big deal. And the app integration, I don't want to play a game with an app. Man, that app integration was so good. The sound effects were cool. Everything about this game I really loved. I love cooperative games, and it was challenging. And I love the way the app integrated, and I love the way we were deciding, where should we take our people, and who should go into this dungeon, who should go into that dungeon, who should fight this person, who should fight that person. And the skulls are dropping out of the tower, and the tower's making noises, and it's just so... It's an event. It's a game, and it's an event. I just absolutely loved it. I haven't come close to playing through all the adventures and combinations, haven't come close to even using very much of the modules and expansions. So much more to explore in Return to Dark Tower. And partly because it feels like such an event, such an adventure. And partly because of the music and the theme and the sound effects of the app. And partly because the tower is so cool and the skulls are bouncing out and you don't know where they're going to go. They're just, it's like I said, it just feels like an adventure. Every time I think about playing it, I just smile on my face. I'm thinking about the great fun we've had, the laughs we've had, and it's hard, it's challenging. But yeah, I really love Return to Dark Tower. So all 10 of these games, terrific games released in 2022. There's a whole bunch more I'm going to put down in the description below. The other 23 games that I played, some of them really loved by a lot of people, like Marvel Dice Throne, Heat Pedal to the Metal, Weather Machine, Ready Set Bet, Wonderland's War, Long Shot the Dice Game, Libertalia. There's a bunch of games that I played that a lot of people really love, and I had a good experience with them too. But these are my top 10, the ones that I enjoyed the most in 2022. Now, stay tuned because pretty soon I'm going to be putting out a video showing you what my top anticipated games of 2023 are. And I know it's already almost February. Had a lot of illness, some travel, redecorated my background here in my office, and so I didn't get a lot of videoing done in January because of that, but better late than never. Hopefully you're enjoying these top 10 lists that I'm putting out. Look forward to the 4th in this edition, talking about my favorite upcoming games in 2023. If you enjoyed this video, I'd love it if you give it a thumbs up. It would be terrific if you'd choose to subscribe to the channel as well. If any of these games are some of your favorite, or if there's things even you don't like about these games, I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments down below. If you want, share with me what some of your best top 2022 releases were in your opinion. As always, thanks for watching. This is Billy Indiana, signing off.